Welcome to Realtor Talk, the show sponsored by the Greater Pocatello Association of Realtors. Today we're going to be talking about increasing your home's curb appeal. I'm Jan Thomas with the Home Specialist Real Estate Company in downtown Pocatello, and I have with me today two guests from Changing Seasons Nursery out on Highway 30. First of all, I have Preston George, who is the owner of Changing Seasons Nursery. He's also the owner of Edgedstone Landscaping Company, and he's been working in the dirt for 20 years. And I have with him his greenhouse manager and master gardener, Susan Merrill. Thank you so much for showing up today. I appreciate you being here. I have actually brought a buyer to view a house, and instead of going inside to take a look at the house when we arrived at this home, they took one look at the front of the house with the lawn, garden, and the house, and said they refused to go inside. So I know that curb appeal isn't really an important thing when you're trying to sell your home, but it's also an important thing when you are trying to maintain your home's value, maintain the integrity of your neighborhood. And so I want us to talk a little bit about what we can do for that first impression of our homes. And so that's why I'm hoping you guys can help us out with some of those ideas. Let's talk about the first impression of a front yard and what you think makes a good first impression. Preston, you've been working in landscaping for a long time, so tell me what are your ideas on that?
Well, like you said, the first thing that people are going to see when they pull up to a home is the front yard. So a neat, clean front yard would be the first thing, free of weeds, dead plants, things like that. Have everything trimmed up, pruned up, and that's the simplest and easiest thing that can be taken care of first.
Sure. Everything looking good. Now, you're a master gardener, and I'm sure your front yard looks fantastic. What do you think about a first impression of a home?
I agree with Preston that the very first cleanliness and neatness of the yard counts ultimate. But then it's color and interest, and it kind of is a teaser to bring you into the home. Say, well, if the yard looks like this, I'm sure that the house is even better. And so it is a great lead-in.
Okay, that's great. And I know I personally love a bright, cheerful front door color. You know, it's always nice to have it clean, like you said, maybe a new mat, maybe a new potted plant sitting by the front door, just to entice people to come in. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Why don't we talk a little bit about local plants that grow well in Idaho? I know that you said at your nursery you have over 90% of the plants there are locally grown or in a light climate. So can you tell us maybe what kinds of trees or shrubs are great things to have in your yard?
Sure. Well, we've been really fortunate. We found some great Idaho growers that grow some really nice trees. Nice thing about those trees and shrubs and perennial flowers, I should say, are that they are cold hardy. They've been grown here in Idaho for several years now. So you're not bringing plants acclimatized just like people do. So you're not putting a plant out of Oregon or Washington or California where they don't get the cold temperatures and the wind that we do here. So that would be the first thing as far as planting and adding to your landscape, is picking and choosing plants that are hardy for our area, which we are typically a zone 4, basically, and that's the zones are rated by temperatures, and there's areas around Pocatello that you can get away with some zone 5 stuff, but for the most part we try and stick with the zone 4 to ensure that the plants will survive our cold winters. Okay.
What kind of trees grow well in our climate then?
Well, we have several different types of trees that grow really well here. We have some of the maple trees, different types of shade trees, I guess I should say first. Maple trees, ash trees, locust, all those trees do really well, and there's many more. The one thing that they do, a lot of people like the maple tree, and they are a beautiful tree. They're both functional for shade and windbreaks, and I mean, but they do need some acidity in the soil, and we tend to be very alkaline. You can change that very easily by adding a soil acidifier, granular type fertilizer that changes the pH of the soil, and that will really help take the stress off the maple trees.
Okay. One thing I've noticed when I've shown houses before is that there's lots of homes with overgrown evergreens, and it seems like they just get bigger and bigger. They cover up the front walkways, the front door, so maybe it's a safety issue because you can't even see the front door when you're going. What do you recommend with these grown evergreens that are everywhere.
First thing, proper planning is key. A lot of people will go and say, oh, that is a really good looking evergreen tree. I want to put that in my front yard. They do the same with shade trees in that though too. And what happens is they tend to, you need to look at the tags and say, you know what, right now that tree's perfect for what I've got, but eventually it's going to be 40 to 60 feet tall and 40 feet wide, and if you're putting that tree in a 20 by 20 area, you're going to have problems. It's going to upheave your sidewalks, it's going to overcrowd and overgrow, and just eventually going to cost a lot of money to cut down and have taken out because it's doing the damage. They can even get so invasive that they can grow into foundations, causing cracks and other problems that way to the home.
Which is not something we want, definitely, when we go to sell our home. Tell me about perennial flowers in this area. I have loved some of the color that's come out finally now that we've gotten a little bit of warm weather after our cold spring. And so we've had kind of a beautiful time this last few weeks. Tell me a little bit about what you like to plant in your borders.
Well, I like a variety. I like color from the early spring until the late fall, and there are lots of perennials that can do that. You start out with, of course, your bulbs, your tulips and daffodils and such, moving into your irises and peonies, and some of the flowering poppies are coming out now. And of course the roses are beginning. Then you move into asters and all of the plants like chrysanthemums. But there's lots of grasses and beautiful flowering shrubs that not only bring beautiful color during the summer, spring, and fall, but lend a great deal of interest to your landscaping come winter when you might have a need for a market to catch the eye of a buyer. And for yourself, and to feed the wildlife that we have and enjoy here in Idaho. There's just lots of options, and we have lots of possibilities as far as perennials that enhance the wind that we enjoy here. We like the grasses. I like some of the Russian sage and the blue flax flowers that will gently sway in the breeze, and so that we're not just always thinking, I wish it wasn't windy, but instead it brings delight.
Okay, that's great.
I might just add that with the perennial flowers and that, we do have lists at our garden center that will early spring flowering list, a summer flowering list, a fall flowering list. So if you want to put together a flower garden, like a perennial flower garden that might be low in the front and then gradually grow up taller, we have those lists also, but so that you can put together a complete perennial garden that starts flowering early in the spring, and as those are ending their flowering season, you've got another group of perennials that are starting to come on, and then again in the fall, and basically that will help you carry color throughout the entire year.
And I know we love to see yards that look like that, so that makes a lot of sense. Tell me a little bit about borders. I know you've done landscaping for lots of years, and Edgton Stone is your company. And so is that something that's totally cost prohibitive for people to do, or is it something that could be in a homeowner's budget?
Well, our totally humble beginnings were as a curbing company in early 2003, and so we started out doing the concrete curbing and edging. Typically you can do plastic edging, wood edging, rock edging, concrete curbing. There's so many different types of edging that define the border of a flower bed between the grass and the actual flower bed that make it nice and make it easier to maintain. And I think that's a key thing to talk about too, is just easy maintenance and having a distinctive border between the grass and the flower bed that makes it easy to maintain. Just gives it that crisp, clean appearance. I would say that concrete curbing's probably right in there on the more expensive end of things, but typically with prep work and everything, you're looking at between $3 and $5 a foot, depending on how ornate you decide to make the borders.
It makes it a lot more easy to maintain the grass from getting into your flower beds. Now talk a little bit about what you can put in your flower beds besides flowers, the bark versus the rock. What's the difference there?
Well, both have their pros and cons. Bark is very natural. It absorbs moisture, kind of gives off a little humidity during the heat of the day. I really like the bark look. Some of the problems with the bark, you need to be concerned about the wind. It may move. We do have a little wind here once in a while. So you got to be concerned where you put bark because you don't want it blowing all over the yard.
And it will break down over time.
It does break down and decay a little bit over time. We try to market a pure cedar bark, which cedar does decay a lot slower than just regular pine or some other tree products that they grind up to make into bark. But anyway, rocks obviously will be here long after we're gone, but they can be a problem also because they absorb a lot of heat during the hot summer months. In July and August, some of those rocks can actually become a detriment to your plants because they do get so hot. One of the ways you can kind of mitigate that is to do a little bit of both. Put some rocks in, maybe clear on a spot underneath the plants, put a little bark in there to absorb the moisture and keep the heat away from the plants a little bit.
All right, well, thank you. You're watching Realtor Talk from the Greater Pocatello Association of Realtors. I'm going to take a short break.